Welcome back to the channel. My name is Shelby, aka 88 Fox. Today we're going to be working on this. What this is a donor car that I got for really cheap. Runs and drives, well, doesn't drive, runs really well, but it was involved in a front end collision. Hey, look at that. A front end collision that ended up going into the driver's side foot well there. So I'm going to use this as a parts car because this is a decent condition 4.6 2 valve for my drift car, which is a 6-cylinder. The thing that we're going to be doing today is we're going to be pulling the rear axle out, which is the full axle, which is a 4 to 8/8. And then we are going to be rebuilding said axle, and we're going to be putting 410 gears in it. So there's our bearing kit, seals, all that good stuff. And then let's see if I can open this somehow, some way. Uh-oh. Well. Yeah, well, anyways, the gears are in there. So we're going to be installing those as well. And then last thing we're going to do before we install it back in the car is going to be weld it all together so that it is a welded diff with 410s. And then we're going to put it in the 6-cylinder. So stay tuned, should be pretty interesting. I've never done this before. I went ahead and got on Late Model Restoration, watched their install video, ordered all the things that I needed to do it. So with luck, we'll be able to rebuild this here in the shop and be successful. All right. Okay, I got the car on jack stands and I have the rear lifted up pretty high so that I can get under it, but it's also two reasons. So I can get under it to get everything loose, and then also when I drop the actual rear end, I can just roll it out instead of having to try to finagle it out. I might not have enough clearance, but if I don't, I can just raise it up a little bit more from the back side there, and then get it out of there. But if you notice, I also got some blocks under it. There's two reasons for that. A, the car doesn't have a front end on it. If for some reason this that jack stand gives way and the front end collapses, then I want to be able to try to get out of there. I'm not saying that I will, but I want to be able to try. And then also B, when I loosen those shocks, that spring is gonna kind of go down, right? Because the shocks are keeping it from limiting, or keeping the spring from limiting to its full stretch. And what happens is that bottom end, or the back end of it, is just going to pop down. So with it like that, it's not going to pop down. I'm going to be able to get the shock out of there, and then I can slowly let out to allow all the weight off of the actual spring itself. So it's really simple, to be honest, to do this. So I'm going to take the drive shaft out first, or just loosen it off, and then I'm going to take the upper control arms loose, which is right there and right there. Take the shock out, and then I'll take the rear, or the lower control arms out, and I'll also have to take out these quad shocks. So uppers, let's say shocks, quad shocks, lowers, and then the very last thing I'll have to do is I'll have to disconnect the brake lines, which I'm just going to disconnect at the caliper because that's going to be easiest. And yeah, that should be good. Brake lines and the e-brake cable, and then it should all slide out. So we'll do that. We'll hit this up. I got my handy dandy impact and wrench, and we'll get this knocked out. Okie dokie. We got the rear end out of the car. Wasn't too bad. The hardest part actually was getting the e-brake off, because I'm trying to save them, because I need to use those e-brakes for the other car. So it was a little bit difficult, but what I ended up doing was I just removed the spring that was in it and then moved this back, popped the clip out. Then I had to go under the car and then pop it out on one side so it would loosen up on the other side, and then get this side out, and then that was that. So this is the full rear end axle wheel assembly. I could just weld this up and call it a day, but what I'm going to do, like I said, is going to fully rebuild it. So I'll put it on jack stands, I'll remove the wheels, and then I'll start disassembling everything. Idea is I'm going to take the axles out first once I take this pumpkin off, because there's C-clips. You just push them in, pull the C-clip out, pull the axle out. Once I get the whole assembly out, I will be able to start pulling the actual differential out. On the back side over here, I'm going to have to use my, what do you call it, slide hammer to get it unpressed out of there, and then we'll go from there. So we'll start working on a full disassembly, and then I will show you what we've got. Everything is pulled out, including the differential. The only thing I have left is the pinion gear, or the pinion, I guess is what that's called, that thing. And the thing about this is it's held on with a nut that is supposedly very difficult to take off. Now they make a tool for this called the pinion, or the flange tool, which is essentially a long piece of metal with a couple of slotted bolts or slotted holes in it. And it fits on here so that you can use it as a leverage point to hold this down while you take this nut off, and when you put the nut back on to do the crush sleeve. They cost like $150, so I wasn't about that life. So I just took a piece of 2-inch angle iron, drilled some holes, made a little relief right there so that I could put this actual nut on here. And then I'm going to use that along with the leverage from our lovely floor, and we're going to see if we can take this off in real time. All right, let's go for it. Boom. That's all it is, but you can see that's Loctited on there. Yeah, so that's probably pretty hefty nut on there. When you put it back on, you got to do the same thing, and then you ram it on as hard as you can with your actual impact, and then you have to use this again along with the breaker bar in order to be able to tighten it the rest of the way. And you got to tighten it to a specific spot so you don't have too much play, but you have enough play. So we'll get into that a little bit deeper once I'm ready to start reassembling everything. But now I should be able to push this out and then be able to get the rest of this disassembled. After that, I'm just going to do a lot of cleanup on it, because I'm going to be welding these axle tubes together, as well as doing a couple other things too. So easy enough. Make your own out of a piece of scrap 2x2 angle iron, or flat bar if you have it. I'll just make sure it's at least like a 1/4 inch thick so you can have enough leverage on there, and then you're good to go. We got the pinion out. I used my 3-jaw puller. In the LMR video it says use a 2-jaw puller. It didn't make sense to me until I started doing it. I put the 3-jaw puller on there and started cranking down, and it spun. So I had to reattach my makeshift pinion flange holder, and I was only able to attach it to 1 bolt, but it wasn't super tight. So I just used that 1 bolt, used it as leverage against like one of the 3rd jaws, and got it out of there. So I got that out. And then next thing I did, I grabbed one of these drifts, a cheap drift off of Amazon. I got a full set of these for like 20 bucks, so pretty nice. And got the races out of there. So I got the inner and outer race out. Something it doesn't mention is that you've got these little grooves right here on the inner and outer portion. That's where your race sits. And so you can actually get a little bit more leverage if you put it against that spot compared to like trying to hit on the outside of these areas. So if you give it a couple good whacks on this side, then move over to this side, give it a couple whacks, and then kind of go back and forth, they come out pretty easily. I put a little damage on the drift, but that's literally what they're made for. But I mean, I wasn't beating the shit out of this thing, so not too bad. Got the races out. So this is completely stripped down now. I think I'm gonna go one step further and clean, well, as you can see, I cut my ABS lines because I didn't have a inverted torque spit. So I'm gonna replace those. But anyways, I'm gonna go one step further and take off the dust shields and everything. And when I clean this all up and get everything welded up, I'm gonna go ahead and just paint it, make it look all nice and pretty. Well, maybe. I might paint it. I don't know. Let me put an asterisk on that. We might paint it, unless I get just super overwhelmed and not want to do it. But we'll at least paint where I grind down to clean up for the welds on the axle shafts or axle tubes themselves. So next step is we're going to start disassembling the pinion and the pinion and the carrier, I guess. I don't know what the hell you actually call it, the differential. And we're going to replace all the bearings on it. I got to do some pressing and bearing separating to get them out. And then we'll replace the gears with the 410s and then slap it all back together. Okay, we are working and pressing some stuff out, getting some stuff done. And I came across a couple issues that I'm just kind of annoyed with. First one being, this is the old pinion. My kit did not come with a new pinion bearing, okay? So I pressed the old one on, but I thought, okay, let's do that and we'll just finish up getting everything else buttoned up. Next thing I was doing was I was looking at the seal I was looking at the flange itself to see if I needed a seal saver on there, and it's good. It doesn't have any grooves or anything. I'm fine with that. Went to go replace the seal, or the seal. The kit doesn't have a new seal either. It has a new nut. I got two new nuts actually. I got a new nut right here, and I got another new nut in the actual 410s themselves. But a little annoyed, so what I'm gonna do is tomorrow go to the parts store. Hopefully they have a new flange seal and then also another bearing. Since I'm already at it, might as well put a brand new bearing in it anyways, and then go from there. So yeah, this kit comes with two new nuts and two crush sleeves, but it doesn't come with a single bearing for the pinion, and it doesn't come with a flange seal. Like, I looked everywhere just to double triple check that I wasn't missing anything. It's not there. So I love LMR, but that's pretty frustrating that this is kind of designed as a complete kit. It even comes with freaking gear oil, but you're gonna miss two important parts that you even say in your video that you need. Yeah, pretty frustrating. So that's gonna be it for today. I'm gonna get back to it in the morning and we will see you then. So after I got over my little pity party and complained about late model restoration. I realized that they didn't miss a bearing. I just don't know what I'm doing. So I just miscounted bearings. I did have the correct bearing, and there it is right there. So I got the bearing pressed on. I got the new crush bearing in there, and I got the little intermediate little shim that you put in it too. So now it's just gonna go through that hole and we'll come out the other side. I'll put the nut back on it, drive it down, and then I have to actually torque it to a specific spec. I did already put new races for verification in there and a new bearing on the other side. It's also got a new bearings or a new seal, and then it didn't have this actual seal, but mine was fine, so I got that pushed back in there. So once we put that pinion back in, tighten it down, we'll have to use our handy dandy flange tool again to actually crush the crush washer down, and then we'll have to use, let's find it, this little guy to make sure that we are within spec on the resistance for the actual flange itself. So that's what's next, and then we will move on to the carrier. All right, so I'll try to show you. We got the preload set at about 22. The idea with new bearings on these is between 16, I believe, and 28. So 22 seemed like a good number. So that is done. The pinion is complete. It is installed, and she's good to rock and roll. Now we're on to the carrier. So with the carrier, what we're gonna do, we're gonna replace these bearings. So replace the races and the bearings. Then we're gonna replace this gear with the 410 gear. And put it all back together, and then hopefully we don't have any shimming that needs to be done. So I'm gonna start tearing this apart, getting these bearings out of here, and then we will go from there. Well, my camera died because it got too hot in here, but I did get the bearings and the races off of, well, not the races, but the bearings off of the differential, and I got it all cleaned up, so it looks pretty good. Everything's nice and clean. So what we're gonna do now is press the new bearings on, which are gonna be right here. And then we're going to put the new ring gear on, which there's the old one, there's the new one. I got to bolt that in and then torque it down, and then this will be ready to slide back in. And hopefully we don't have to make any adjustments from there. That was an absolute nightmare to get off and do. I had to end up cutting the cages off and get all the bearings out, and then had to use a combination of a few different things. I actually had to go buy a 2-jaw puller because there is a spot where you can pull on these bearings. So right here and right here. At least they did that for us. But One side came off pretty easy, the other side was just absolute nightmare, so had to cut the race and do all that good stuff. Where's that? There you go. So I had to cut, or not the race, I had to cut the bearing off and crack it a little bit in order to be able to get it off, but no harm, no foul, just a learning experience. And then also, this place is just an absolute disaster. So once I get all this cleaned up, get these bearings pressed in, we're gonna sit back and we're gonna clean up some things before we progress too much further, because this place is just a big old trip hazard right now. But all right, that's what we're gonna do. Let's get these bearings pressed in, get this ring gear on, and let's see how it lines up. All right guys, here is the final product. We got new bearings on the top and bottom, and we got the ring gear installed. Ring gear, I used the provided Loctite that came with it, and then torqued it to 35 pounds on the first pass in a star pattern, and then the second pass I did 100 foot-pounds as well in a star pattern. Spent a couple minutes cleaning the inside of this thing up a little bit. So I used if you've never used this, these are incredible. These little paint strippers, they just work for everything. So I used a paint stripper to clean all this off around the outside of the pumpkin. Sprayed inside here with some brake cleaner and also some purple power. Cleaned off the inside of this. I'm waiting for it to dry a little bit more, and then I'm going to just do one final pass with a rag to get any final debris off there, and then I'm gonna use the blower over there to give it another little final touch, and then we'll install this. So I gotta put oil in the bearings. I'm gonna oil those up really good, and then it says to put a little coat of oil on this and then on the outside of the race before we put the bearing caps back on, the caps and shims back on. So I got to do that as well. And then we'll drop it in, torque it down, and then we'll check for I guess backlash, whatever you do with the dial indicator. I don't know. I'm doing the same thing as you, just Googling and YouTubing along. And then we'll see if we have to do any shims. Hopefully we don't. Hopefully it just bolts right in and we're good to go. But we'll see. So next portion of this video, you'll see the wear pattern that we have on the actual ring gear itself. And that is the final product for the gear install. So after I put everything in, I torqued it down, and then I used my dial indicator with a mag base to check the backlash, and it was perfect. It's supposed to be between 8 1,000ths, maybe 100s, I don't know, and 12 1,000ths. It was sitting at right at 10.5, 11. So that was fine. Then I put the paste on here, and I ran it through, and it's kind of hard to see. Well, let's see. But it is riding right in the middle where it's supposed to be. I read the Ford Performance how-to doc, and like everything I could see says that it's good. So no shims added other than the factory ones that were in there. So that one and that one for the bearing, and then just the factory shim that was for the pinion itself. So I'm happy with it. I think it'll be fine. We're good to go. So next step, I did pull out the axle bearings because this one was definitely leaking, and this one was fine, but might as well just do both of them since I got them. Got those with the slide hammer that I rented from O'Reilly's. So I'm going to reinstall those, and then I'm going to put the axles in just to make sure my C-clips are in, or so I can make sure that this is lined up and put my C-clips in, and then we're going to weld it. So we're going to weld the spider gears together so that they don't fluctuate or flex at all, and then we're also going to weld the spider gears to the actual housing of the differential itself. And then we're also going to clean this up and weld the axle shafts or axle tubes together as well. So I'm going to go ahead and slap everything back together, put these new bearings in, and then we'll get started with welding. So upon a little bit deeper dive, it's not exactly perfect. There's a little bit of, it's a little bit closer to the toe, which I think means a smaller pinion or smaller shim on the pinion, but I am not worried about it. It's pretty damn close, so it's good enough for me. So next, we're gonna go ahead and get to welding. So you can understand what we're doing here. I'm gonna weld these gears together. These are your spider gears. I'm gonna weld all those together and just kind of stuff a bunch of weld in there. And then I'm gonna do it on the opposite side. And then I'm going to weld the top, or weld the spider gear to the actual case of the differential itself. So that's what we're doing. Check it out. All right, so we're gonna let this thing cool down. It's fully welded up. I'm gonna let that cool down, and then in the meantime, I'm going to clean this off right here on these axle shaft tubes, and then weld the surrounding of the axle shaft tube. After everything's nice and cooled off, gonna hit it really good with the brake cleaner. Get all the, if there's any junk in there, I'm gonna get it all out, and then we'll put gear oil in it and close this thing up. But that thing is hot right now. I will do another check right before I button it up, or right before I add the gear oil, to make sure, or right before I clean it up, to make sure that everything's good. But it's pretty well welded in there, so it's definitely going to be a straight axle for sure. So we'll get this cleaned up, get these outsides welded, and we'll be close to wrapping up. All right, y'all, she is complete. Went ahead and did a paint job on her with some roll bar paint, but she looks good. It'll be good enough for a drift car anyways, I hope. So that's gonna be it for this. Everything's buttoned up, ready to rock. All I gotta do is add oil, and then obviously it needs to go be put in the car. But next steps are gonna be, we're gonna pull that car in, so the yellow V6 Mustang, aka Mustard, and we're going to put this rear end in, and then we got some other things to do as well. So I've got, the whole reason I bought this car is to kind of help rebuild that car. So I gotta get some electrical stuff out of here. So there's a mirror, some mirrors, some windows, some electrical stuff, couple other items that I want to sneak off of here, and a couple things that I'm going to keep in the event that I mess them up, including I'm going to pull the motor out of this and the transmission, reseal it because it's good. It just leaks leaks a little oil, and then we'll have that ready to go in the event I want to upgrade this thing to a V8 at some point. But it's got a spicy little V6 in it already, so we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's going to be it for this episode. If you like what I'm doing, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, do all the things. If you don't like what I'm doing, then share it, laugh at me in the comments. Tell me what I could do better. This is the very first 8.8 I've ever built. One thing I noticed about this is the big part is having the right tools. Even though I had the majority of the right tools, I still didn't have everything I really needed to do this the easiest way possible. So it's a good idea to keep some extra races and bearings and stuff like that to be able to help you when you're pressing stuff off and pressing stuff on, or whatever. I did end up breaking a couple tools, so you know, maybe it would be worth getting some really high quality like jaw pullers, 2 jaw pullers, getting some high quality bearing and race drivers, that kind of stuff. And then the majority of the rest of the stuff you can just get from Amazon for pretty cheap. I think I spent a total of $200 on tools, and then I bought that press, which I needed anyways, which was $200 as well. So about $400 in tools. Honestly, I should have upgraded and spent probably another $150, $200 on better tools, including those pullers like I was saying. But overall, that would be the same price it would cost to send it to somebody to get it done. Maybe even cost more for labor. And I learned something. Is this thing perfect? Probably not, but it's about as close as I could get with the tools that I got. It wasn't super difficult, but you do need to have the right tooling for it. But we'll see. Once I get it all put into mustard, we'll see how she runs, how she performs. I'm gonna take it easy for a little while, get about 200 miles on it or so. And then we'll do some rips in it and see how well it performs. But 410s, welded diff, yeah, should help make this car go sideways pretty freaking easy. So we'll see. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Again, like, subscribe, share, comment. We'll see you later.